everyone! Welcome back to the University of Guelph Arboretum. My name is Michelle and I'm the Summer Naturalist here at the Arboretum. And today I'm in Victoria Woods to talk to you guys about a group of organisms that are pretty incredible. So I'm not going to be talking to you guys about plants or animals. Today this video is all about fungi and lichen. So in biology there is a hierarchy of classifying organisms, and one of the very broad groups of classification are kingdoms. And oftentimes people are very familiar with the plant and animal kingdom, but there's actually more kingdoms than just the plant and animal kingdom. There's also the fungi kingdom. So mushrooms are a type of fungi, and they're completely separate from plants and animal. And I know that can be a bit confusing because mushrooms grow out of the soil just like plants do, and they might look similar to plants, but they actually have a very different biology. One of the big characteristics about plants is the fact that they can create their own energy. And they do this using the chlorophyll in their leaves, and they photosynthesize the sunlight to create fuel for themselves. Fungi, on the other hand, doesn't have any chlorophyll in its cells. It's unable to photosynthesize or create energy for itself using any other mechanism. So they are actually reliant on eating or consuming other organisms to create energy for themselves, just like animals. Fungi are actually more closely related to animals than they are to plants, but they're still very separate groups of organisms. And one of the most amazing things about fungi is the fact that they're found all over the world in such huge diversity. So let's take a moment to peek around Victoria Woods, where I'm at, to see what fungi we can find. When you walk around Victoria Woods, a lot of the times you'll find a lot of fallen logs. And really, whenever you walk any forest, you'll probably find these fallen logs. And at first glance, it might look like there's not a whole lot going on with these logs. But even though the tree that grew these logs are dead, doesn't mean there isn't a whole lot of life still living on this log. And this little fungi, this mushroom, is an excellent example of organisms that use logs, fallen trees, as not only a home, but also a source of food. So when I look around this log, I can see multiple types of mushrooms. Since fungi aren't able to photosynthesize, they can actually live in areas where plants might not want to. So they can live in darker environments because they don't need the sunlight to create their own energy. And they can often be found in cool, moist environments, is where you'll find a lot of different types of mushrooms. Not only will they grow out of logs, but they can grow out of the soil and in a variety of different habitats. And if we take a closer look at the mushrooms that we just saw, we can take a closer note of their anatomy. When we take a look at a mushroom, there's actually a lot more to it than meets the eye. So within this log, there's actually more structures of the mushroom that we just can't see. All of these structures that we're seeing out here on top of the log is actually sort of like the fruit of a mushroom. This is the reproductive part of this mushroom. Since mushrooms are such a diverse group of organisms, sometimes their identification can be a little bit tricky. But if you take note of the different parts and anatomy of a mushroom, you can help understand what mushroom you're looking at. It's also often handy to have some type of resource or guide to help familiarize yourself with the mushrooms in your area. And the University of Guelph Arboretum actually produces these biodiversity booklets on a variety of topics. This one's on mushrooms, and it's an excellent guide for anyone who's looking to learn a little bit more about mushrooms in their area. But if we think about the anatomy of a mushroom, different groups of mushrooms will look very different, but a lot of us are familiar with this type of mushroom shape. And so the main parts of anatomy to note when you're looking at this type of mushroom is the cap and the stem. So the cap of the mushroom actually stores and produces the spores of that mushroom. And mushrooms reproduce using those spores. Spores are tiny little pieces or packets of information and resources that the mushroom needs to spread itself. And they're really light and really small. You actually can't see them with just your eye. You can't see an individual spore. And because they're so small and light, they actually float through the air quite easily. And that allows the mushroom to disperse itself into new locations without having to get up and move. So the cap of the mushroom stores the spores, and underneath the cap is often a structure that releases the spores. So if you take note of the size and shape and color of the cap of the mushroom, and then take a look underneath that mushroom and note whether there are gills or teeth or pores, this is all excellent information to help you understand what mushroom you're looking at. You can also take note of the size and shape of the stem of that mushroom, and that'll also help clue you in into what mushroom you're looking at. Because mushrooms are such a diverse group of organisms, the anatomy and structure of mushrooms can be quite variable. In the case of false turkey tails, for example, they actually lack stalks. And the spore surface of puffballs is a little bit different. So puffballs grow their spores on the inside of the fruit. And once the spores are mature and ready to be released, they are released through a hole at the top of the puffball when that mushroom is touched. Now, the thing to remember is a lot of times people use Mushroom ID to help forage for different types of mushrooms. Sometimes people are looking to forage to eat mushrooms. And it's really important to always follow the guidelines of wherever you're exploring or hiking, because some places don't allow foraging, like the Arboretum. The Arboretum is a non-consumptive space, so we do ask if you find a mushroom that you would like to forage to please leave it alone. We ask that no one disturbs or collects plants, animals, or fungi. Anything you find in the Arboretum is best to leave it alone. And also, because mushrooms are so easy to mistake, their identification can sometimes be quite tricky. Sometimes two mushrooms will look very similar, and one species is okay to eat, and the other one can actually be harmful to eat. So it's always important, if you're looking to forage mushrooms, to be very, very certain that you know what you're collecting, and you're collecting things in a responsible way to ensure that no one gets harmed. Now, mushrooms are incredibly interesting, not just because they're a very diverse group of organisms, but because of the roles they play within their environment. And one of the biggest roles mushrooms play in their environment is they act as detrivores. So detrivores are organisms that help break down organic matter. And that's why fungi will often grow out of fallen trees. So if you think of all the resources, nutrients that a tree used to grow up, once it dies and it's fallen over and now it's a lot of those resources are still trapped within that log. And so it's really important for detrivores to step in and help recycle those resources back into the environment. And fungi are pretty special because they actually have no trouble breaking down logs. And a lot of other detrivores have struggles breaking down logs initially. And that's because the components of a tree have a lot of structures that are difficult to break down. And the way a fungi breaks them down is they actually secrete enzymes onto the surface of that log that they're living out of. And that helps break it down, and then they're able to absorb the nutrients from that log. And once a fungi gets going breaking down a log, it actually helps other detrivores step in and break down that log, because the process has started, and now it's a bit easier for other detrivores to step in and also help break down that log. Fungi also have different relationships with the other organisms within their environment. So in some cases, fungi will act as parasites, meaning that they use another organism for their own advantage. And in other cases, they'll also have mutualistic relationships with organisms. A lot of times, they'll be mutualistic with plants. So if you think of the roots of a plant, the roots of a plant are looking to gain water and minerals from the soil. And there's times where a fungi will actually step in and help shuttle those resources to the roots of that plant. And in return, the plant will feed the fungi with sugars that it's able to produce through photosynthesis. And so in that case, both parties are winning and gaining from their relationship. Another relationship that fungi take part in is actually the formation of lichen. So lichen are really unique organisms that are actually the symbiotic relationship between two fungi and one algae. So let's take a closer look at a lichen in Victoria Woods. Now, even if you don't know what lichen is, there's a really good chance that you've actually seen and walked past them. So if we take a close look at the outside of this tree, growing on and in between the bark is actually lichen. So you can see really all over this tree, there's little groups of lichen growing. So lichen are this complex life form made up of fungi and algae. And in this relationship, fungi are the more dominant players. And they help provide the structure and protection for algae. Algae are able to photosynthesize similar to plants, so they offer the fungi resources. And in this case, both parties are winning. So the fungi is offered resources that it otherwise wouldn't able to obtain by itself because it can't photosynthesize, and that allows it to grow and spread. And algae are often constricted to living in more moist or aquatic environments, and so with the protection and structure offered from algae, they're able to grow in new places. And that's one of the most amazing things I think about lichen, is that they're able to grow in a variety of different surfaces. So when you walk through a forest, a lot of times you'll see them growing on the outside of trees like we just saw, and they'll also grow on rocks. But if you look at more urban environments, they can also grow on benches and on the outside of buildings, so they can grow just about anywhere. And within the environment that they're living, they provide a lot of different benefits. So they're a food source for certain animals. They help convert oxygen in carbon dioxide into oxygen, which is really handy for us oxygen breathing animals. And they help weather down rocks into the formation of soil. They also act as a bioindicator for air quality. Because they're able to absorb so many things from the atmosphere, if the air is very polluted, sometimes lichen are affected. But scientists are also able to sample and study lichen to help get a sense of the amount of pollution within the environment. Lichen also, and fungi really as well, are so diverse and so colorful. I think it's really amazing to be able to walk through a forest and note the different colors and the different species of fungi and lichen you can find really in any environment because they grow in so many different places. It's really exciting, in my opinion, to walk through a forest or walk through any environment and note the different types of fungi and lichen you can find. Even if you don't know how to ID them, it's still really exciting and beautiful to see them in their environment. And because they're so diverse, oftentimes there are fungi and lichen that haven't even been discovered. Here at the University of Guelph, at one point, there was a lichen that was new to science that was found right here. And that's really exciting because this is a type of lichen no one even knew had existed, and for a while was only found in the Arboretum. It's now found in different places, but imagine how exciting of a discovery that would be to be walking around the Arboretum and find a new species that no one else knew about. So I hope next time you go on a walk, you're able to appreciate and note all the different organisms that are living in nature. Not only are plants and animals super cool, but there's also organisms like fungi and lichen that are super pretty, super important for the environment, and really exciting to find. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and you'll join me next week for another video.